Before we actually get started, I wanted to talk to you about the Kawandi quilt that I made. Mine is a table runner, and I think if you want to make one and you've never done it before, start off with something small. Mine is about 38 inches long and it's about 8 inches wide. Mine does not have any batting in it. It is 2 layers only. It is the backing and it is the scraps on the front. So it's a great way to use up your scraps. Let's talk about supplies. My favorite part of any new project is gathering supplies. Now, we're going to talk about the fabric in a minute. So you're going to need a spray bottle with some water or some spray starch. You're going to need either a rotary cutter and a scissor, or I use both actually. You're going to need, I'm so sorry, an iron. I use this little portable iron and I love it so much. I used pearl cotton for my stitching and it's size 8. You don't have to use pearl cotton. If you don't have any, you can use embroidery floss, but you should be using at least 3 to 4 strands in your needle, which leads me to straight pins. A lot of people do not use pins when they're making their Kawandi quilts. I do, and you'll see why later. A ruler. And this is an ironing mat. I find it very handy to have like a little mat and the iron is right there and I'm sitting at my table and I'm doing everything at once. You're also going to need some kind of a sewing needle, and a longer, thinner one with a decent size eye is a good option. Let me go back to the pins. I prefer using straight pins without a head for this project. You're going to need a piece for your backing. Now, you've already obviously determined how big your piece is going to be, so you need a big piece of fabric. I would not recommend piecing the fabric for your first try. Get one piece of fabric. I'm going to be making a 12 by 12 in this lesson. Here's my fabric, and you will notice maybe that it is laying flat, okay? It's not like in this big puffy pile on my table, and that's because I ironed it. The reason for ironing, and I know a lot of you do not like to iron, but the reason to iron is you're starting out with something flat, you're not fighting a piece of wrinkled cloth, and it will be much easier as you're working on this project. This is not your typical slow stitch project. There's a few nuances about making one of these that, let's see, how can I say it? That ironing your fabric will make it go easier. So I would iron your scraps, and also about your scraps, try not to use a really tiny piece. This Kawandi quilt technique requires, in my opinion, if you're a beginner, it requires a little bit of a wider or bigger piece. So this piece is about 2 inches wide and I haven't cut it this way yet. This is perfect. So don't go any smaller than 2 inches. The reason for that is when we go to prepare the cloth, the fabric, for the quilt, we're going to fold this over at least a ½ inch. Don't be stingy, and I mean it. If we're folding over both sides at ½ inch, you see what you're left with? It's just this skinny little piece. So that's why I'm telling you not to really use these teeny tiny pieces of fabric. You must iron your back. Iron it so it's nice and flat, and after you've ironed it flat, you have to fold over the edges, all 4 sides. So you're going to fold it over at least a ½ inch. You can go up to 3/4 inch, but at least a ½ inch. Fold it over, use some spray starch or some water, press it so it's going to stay. You're going to press this side, then this side, then you're going to press this side, and then this side. So nothing fancy in the corners. If you're right-handed, you're going to start in the upper right-hand corner. right here. Now I'm just going to turn this so that so you can see it and that it's close to me, and I'm going to work my way up that way. So you fold it over those two sides, and now you're putting it right on top of the corner of your square or whatever shape that you made. Now I use a pin. So I put the pin on both sides. Now I'm ready for my next piece. Some people would stop right there and stitch, and I'm not going to do that yet. Let's use this piece. Same thing. Let's do it here on camera so you can see me. I'm going to fold it over, and I am finger pressing it. Now I'm finger pressing it with my fingernail. You can definitely have your iron sitting here, and I say bravo because I like a nice crease in my fabric. Now this piece is going to go next to this one. So you have a choice. You're going to keep making choices. This is like doing a puzzle. When you start making one of these, you are really going to get into the zone, and it's wonderful. It's like a meditation. So I am going to either fold this gold piece under and put it on top of the green one, which is actually a little bit easier on your fingers to do that rather than, or you could put it under the green one and then fold the green one over. But remember, you've got to fold it over 1/2 inch. So what I like to do is not only fold it over 1/2 inch, I like to go on top of the new piece 1/2 inch. So you see what I mean? 1/2 inch on top of the new piece and 1/2 inch folded over. All right, so see, now that it's like that, I'm going to just leave it, and I'm going to put a pin. Now, I'm going to tell you, I do not do this the way everybody else does it, so I'm going to keep going. And I've chosen another piece, and that one I just picked up at random. So now I say, oh, I like the way that color looks. What am I going to do? Am I going to fold this over and put it on top of that? Or am I going to put this one underneath? And you might be asking yourself at this very moment, what's the difference? Well, the difference is sometimes you're adding a really tiny piece and you're fumbling with it in your hand, and you will see what the difference is. So now I fold it over the top. That's going underneath, and remember, you're putting it right along that top of that fabric. I'm going to lay my next piece down and stick my pin in it. I am going to go all the way across. So just keep pulling that over. And sometimes I'll put a piece down and I won't like the way it looks, so I'll take it back up. I'm going to fold that edge over. And I chose to fold this one over because it's a bigger piece. This one I would be fiddling with. You could do it with this one to fold it under, but I would be fiddling with it too much. So remember, I'm going to lay it right on top along the edge. And normally I have this, let me show you how I usually do it when I'm doing it. Oh, this pin's okay, that's a stinker. That pin was a stinker. So normally I hold it like this, and I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, start in the left-hand corner and go this way. So normally I go like that, And I'm just going to show you normally what I do because it's different than what I'm showing you on camera slightly. So as I prepare the pieces, I do take another pin. Let me bring them closer. I do take another pin, and especially if I have longer pieces, and it's so easy when you're going away from you. I just stick another pin in that direction going up. It just keeps the fold in place. As I said, no one else does this, so feel free to not do it this way. There's other videos out there. So now I'm back to a corner. With this kind of a quilt, you always have to be thinking ahead. So remember I said it was like doing a puzzle? So now I'm coming to the corner. I have this piece. I need to fold something over here, and also the top, and also the corner. So I have to make sure that this piece is big enough to cover, let's lay it down here so you can see, big enough to cover, it's already folded under, a 1/2 inch of this piece, and then enough, I have a 1/2 an inch on that end to fold it under so that it fits into the corner nicely. You see, now I have my squares in there, and I'm going to put a pin right here because I want to see if it's going to lay flat and if I'm happy with it and everything is hunky-dory. So it looks pretty good to me. I'm happy. Now I'm going to start my stitching. So that's the way I do it. I do it all the way across, and then I get out my needle with my thread, and I'll be right back with that. With this technique, you stitch as you go along, and sidebar, you know me and my sidebars. What you normally do when you're making one of these, or what most people do, is as soon as they put that first piece down, they get out their needle and thread and they stitch it down. They don't use all these pins, and you can certainly do it that way. I just like to do it this way because I get this whole thing prepared, and then I go sit on the couch and I stitch it. I'm going to tell you, honestly, I go all the way around and then I stitch it. In fact, let's be bold and use the gold one right now, or yellow. And it's not even Happy Yellow Monday, but we're going to use that one. And you can ask me about that in the comments below. Happy Yellow Monday. I am going to start up in this right-hand corner because I am right-handed, and I'm going to go along this way. I have a knot at the end of my thread, and I've got you pretty close up, so I'm going to have to keep my hands still. You're going to slide your needle in between the two layers to hide your knot, and you're going to go off the corner at about 1/2 an inch, because if you want to put the triangles in, you're going to need this open flap. If you're not going to put the triangles in, you can start right at the corner, but don't go straight from the back. You have to go between so you hide your knot. Hope that made sense. So I'm going to go in about 1/2 an inch. My knot's going to be hidden back in that underneath there. And you're going to take your stitches larger than if you were quilting a quilt. So traditionally, and I'm going to remove one of the pins, traditionally the stitches on these quilts are big, and fight the urge to make those stitches small. That's all I can say. So you're just going to do a running stitch, and if you have a decent needle, you can do more than one stitch at a time. But I will warn you that the edge has a lot of bulk, and you do get caught on your needles, your pins rather, but I don't care. They're worth it. Right here, I'm getting ready to approach a corner. So I'm going to remove this pin. But you have to stitch right in the corner as you're going along. Let me see if you can see that. You have to stitch right in that corner. So you either have to go from the top down in that corner or from the bottom up in that corner. Whoa, what is she talking about? So my stitch, I didn't want to make a stitch that's like a 1/2 inch long. So I'm going to go down. And now I'm going to come back up right in that corner. So obviously the spacing isn't as even right here as it is over here, and we're not even striving for even spacing here. We're striving for, let's see, what are we striving for? We're striving for this to be structurally sound. So we're just going to stitch all the way across. Now see, right where I am now, I can do a little bit of a running stitch because there's not as much bulk. This has a lot of folds there. And I wish I knew where my thimble was. So you're going to do this all the way across, and I'm just going to let you sit with me for a minute, and we'll go across. And I will tell you that it is snowing outside today. All right, I've gone across the whole thing. Let me show you my stitches. See how the color looks really cute, right? And on the back. So now we're in the corner again, and if you're going to put the triangles in, I just wanted to remind you to not stitch across the corner. So you're going to leave about a 1/2 inch because you'll have to stick your triangle in there at the end. So I am going to go to the back, or not the back, I'm going to go in between the 2 layers, and I'm going to scoot over I scooted over. Do you see where I scooted? And now I'm just going to keep stitching. Well, I can't keep stitching because I don't have any more squares on. So I'm going to put some more squares on, and you know how I did that, so I don't need to do that on camera. You see how there's long, short, wide, whatever. As I said earlier, it's like a puzzle, and when we go all the way around, we're going to go all the way around the whole entire thing, and then we're going to start filling this in. And you can always trim this off, but you can always put a piece on there. And you'll see what I mean when we get there. You can put a piece like that, and then put another piece on that side. So I don't want you to worry about your pieces that when they're uneven like that. I want you to just go with it. So then you can put that piece over there, and so you could use that piece that's in there. I want to show you how I end my thread. So I would stop where I could pick up a flap of fabric so I could get underneath there. And I'm just going to fold that over, and I'm just going to stick a pin in it for the moment so you can, pin lover, so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to just tie a little knot, and I pull the knot down to the back of the fabric with my needle, and I'm going to do that 2 times. And the knot is right down there. Okay, that's it. That's how I end my thread. And then I just push it over like that. And I do leave some there. I don't leave it that long, but that's good. So I just cut it off, and I'm fine. I'm great. There's no knotting on the back. It's perfectly intact. What I do when I add my new thread, I put the knot in between the 2 layers. I just kind of slipped in right here, and instead of coming out where you would start making the next stitch, I come out in the last stitch. Let's see, in the last stitch, you see that? There's the yellow, and now I've changed over to pink. And the reason I do that is because I'm going to go back into that hole. My stitches will continue and they will look like they just kept going, only changing colors. I have finished my stitching all the way around. So now you're ready to do the next layer. But if you wanted to use batting, if you wanted to use a piece of wool or a piece of felt or anything in between the two layers, now's the time to do it. Now, I am not going to do it, but I will show you how. Let's pretend this is a piece of batting. So you're going to measure your piece minus just a hair for the stitching. So it's just going to be, let me lay it out here. It's going to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than your piece. All right, and you're going to cut it out. Okay, in my case, I would cut out a square. And now you're going to tuck it in. So you're going to flip these back. And you're going to lay this. You're going to lay your batting in, and it's going to take you a few minutes. You're going to have to fiddle with it a little bit. And you can lift up your seam, your fold over, and lay it there, and just kind of go, you'll have to go around the whole square or rectangle, whatever it is you're doing, and then just lay it back down. Good morning. It's the next day, and I wanted to show you some more options. So I have, this is a totally different piece. I've stitched all the way around the outside edge. And I stitched another line about 1/2 inch in from the edge. And these quilts are traditionally stitched around and around because that's how you work. Whereas regular quilts, you would go back and forth. We're not doing that. We're going to do it in the Kawandi fashion. Anyway, I had to stop stitching. I went to do the 3rd row right here. And I'm sorry, this is gray thread. You probably can't see it. I started to do the 3rd row, but I'm going to run out of where to stitch. You don't want to stitch right along the raw edge because that is going to prevent you from adding more pieces. So basically, you have to do another piece. So here's another piece. This is folded under. I'm going to stick this in. And I can stitch right here. I can do the stitching right here from here to here, but I'm not going to. Now this is the way the Kawandi people work, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that because I don't know the history, the true history of the whole thing. I just like their quilts. Anyway, I could stitch a couple more stitches, but I'd have to stop here because you never want to go all the way to the end. You always want to leave yourself the opportunity to add a new piece, to make a decision about how you're going to add the new piece. So I'm going to work all the way across. Basically, you have 2 choices. You can do it one piece at a time and keep stitching. You can do it on your lap, I guess, if you're comfortable. I'm not. I'm sitting at a table. Or if you wanted the project to be a stitch on the go, you could do this. And you can pin down all your pieces. You could baste some of them if you hate the pins. You could baste some down. And then you can take the entire thing. You could go in the car and you can stitch it. You could take it to the beach. You could sit out on your front porch. And you're done with all these little scraps. So I did want to show you this as an option. This is the way I made my red one that I showed you earlier. And I know the pins will make some of you crazy. But I did want to show you this. I also wanted to show you something. I don't know if you noticed. this background. This is 100% wool. I make penny circles. I sell them in my recycled parts for art store and in my textile shop at the Little House store, but I can't stop making them. I love them. So I decided to start hand dyeing my own wool. And I thought, why not use a piece of wool for this? I'm going to tell you, it's a game changer. The wool typically does not fray, so I thought, because I use it on the penny circles and it works great. So I thought I'm going to use it as a backing for this. Well, when I say it was a game changer, it is a game changer because when you're stitching through this, it's like stitching through butter. And when you're stitching through this with all the seams and it's all cotton fabric, it's a struggle. And I'm going to give you a bunch of tips at the end of the video on how to combat some of the problems with this project. I shouldn't call them problems. Opportunities. Let's call them opportunities. It's time to put the triangles in if you've decided to do that. And so I recommend you cut a 2-inch square of fabric. And I'm going to do all mine the same color. And you just fold it in half and fold it in half again to make a little triangle. And remember, you did not stitch the ends shut, so you're just going to put it in there, real simple, and then do your stitching. Finish your stitching around that corner, and that's it. Simple city. Yay! Our quilt is done. Yes. All right. Good for you if you finished one. Good for me that I'm finishing this video. It was painful because it was long. I wanted to keep you with me for the whole video, but you would have been with me for hours and hours, maybe even days. So I broke it up as best I could in the editing thing. And I hope that you understand it, and I hope you make one. If you do, please let me know. Tag me on Instagram or Facebook or something and show me your quilt. But to end this video, I did want to go over a few little tips that I learned. I have my cheat sheet here that I learned along the way. And I'll just put them all in one section here at the end. If you're right-handed, start from the right side. If you're left-handed, left side. You need a sharp, longish needle. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what kind of needle to use because it really does depend on what kind of back you use. So if you're going to try the wool like I did, this one that I finished is with wool. If you're going to try the wool, you can get away with a fatter needle. I used a Milner's number 3, and it worked great. If you're not going to use pearl cotton size 8, then you want to use at least 3 to 4 strands of floss. I almost said dental floss. I'm telling you, I'm shot. Keep your seams. Okay, I can't stress this enough. Like, I want to get up and do a dance and like holler and scream. Keep your seams a minimum of a 1/2 inch. Even, 3/4 of an inch is not going to be a horrible thing. And the reason why is you're going to see that the things are going to start shifting as you're working. And all of a sudden, you're going to go, wow, I don't have the seam allowance that I need. So if you start out with a big seam allowance, you're going to be fine. Plus, very important, I'm going to show you on this. So let's just look at this corner up here. You see how right here, as I was going across and I was stitching, I wasn't stitching along the very, very edge of the patch. So what happens if you don't have a wide seam allowance, it's going to come out. Let me take a second and explain that a little bit further. So I told you to do your quilting stitches about a half an inch apart, okay? So about a half an inch. So each time you do another row, you're going down a half an inch, right? So the fact that your patches are all uneven, they're up, they're down, they're over, whatever, they're all different ways, you are not going to hit the edge every single time that you are doing your quilting stitches. That's why if you have at least a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch, you will catch a part of that fold under. Okay, does it make sense? I hope it makes sense. Anyway, you want to follow the tradition as best you can, but I'm going to go back and do a little stitching here and there on here just to keep these pieces down. Like here, right here is another one. I do not think the Kawandi police are going to come after you if you go back and put a few extra stitches in. So take that into consideration. Okay, so that's really important. The seam allowance is super important. Did I say it was super important? Okay, you got the point. Fight the urge to make small stitches. I know we all want to make small stitches. Well, if you've done slow stitching or if you've been a quilter or whatever, you want to make small stitches. Fight the urge and make bigger stitches. That's what they traditionally do. They make smaller, I'm going to say smaller on the top and bigger on the back, but ultimately the top is kind of a bigger stitch anyway. Blah, blah, blah. Boy, can I go on and on. Okay. Now, there's one more thing. I almost forgot to tell you about this. It's a chain nose or flat nose plier, and you really need one of these when you're doing the quilting stitches because sometimes your needle gets stuck in the quilt because there's so many layers. So you want to have one of these handy. You can pull your needle out with this. It's wonderful. You can also use a thimble. If you're used to using a thimble, it will be helpful to push the needle through. But this is a wonderful thing. So I hope you'll try it. And if you're wondering what the smoke is coming over here into the video camera, it is my humidifier and I forgot to turn it off. So I have it running all the time. All right, I think that's about it. So I'll say goodbye for now, and I will see you next Friday. Don't forget to spread the joy.